Hi guys, hope you're all doing well. Thank you so much for tuning back into my channel. I am your girl Rumbi. I'm bringing to you my Pillowtalk session. This is literally like my favorite segment because I just sort of get to talk about all the things that I care about, all the things that are on my heart, and to be quite honest, this is like therapy for me. So welcome to your therapy session, girl. A really fun, slight overwhelming, slight interactive week this week. So I hosted the Zing to the World Snapchat Tuesday from Monday to Tuesday, and as per usual, not that it's surprising at this point, I spoke about, you know, mental health. I spoke about healing from trauma. I wanted to make this video because I got a lot of questions around, you know, how I healed from sexual trauma, how I communicate my sexual trauma and my sexual experience in relationships. I started this Pillow Talk session because I really wanted to not empower, because I don't like the word empower, but I wanted to push the idea of self-healing. I wanted to push the idea of self-love. I wanted to push the idea of self-awareness, particularly in relationships, because I understand from experience, from obviously just watching and being in the society that we're in, that a lot of the times those are the places that our trauma gets triggered. Those are the places that really create hurt for us as human beings. Those are also the places that create a lot of PTSD, a lot of mental health problems for us. So that's why, you know, as much as I want to kiki all the time, I also want to make sure that I'm pushing in that message of self-love, self-healing, self-empowerment, self-discovery, self-worth, because that's what I feel as though will make a huge difference when it comes to your healing. So today I'm going to be basically answering those two questions. I'm going to be sharing what I learned through trying to overcome my sexual trauma. A lot of you guys were asking me this in relation to also sex. I am very weary of speaking on that because I don't want my mother to kick me out of her house. Now I don't want my parents to be like, what are you doing? I'm going to try to talk about these things in relation to being intimate in relationships as well, but also I'm not going to go R-rated because that's just not what I want. I just don't feel like that's necessary, so I'm going to keep it very, very much so PG. And so 2018 into 2019, that's when I actually actively started, you know, wanting to heal myself in that regard. I think that for me, abuse that I went through when I was younger was always something, you know, filled with shame and guilt. At some point I thought that it was my fault. That's the reason why I'd gone through what I'd experienced, and I think for a very long time I just never wanted to, I didn't want to associate with that trauma, and I was definitely trying to hide from it. A lot of people struggle communicating these things in relationships because we also come from a society where we've been taught not to talk about these things in relationships. Like anything that happens in your family, don't share with your boyfriend. Anything that has happened to you, don't share with your boyfriend. And I understand why we've been taught to do that. I understand the dangers of sharing that sensitive information with people, but at the same time I've also seen the dangers of not sharing that information with people, because remember, when we talk about love, when we talk about unconditional love, when we talk about healthy love, as human beings, we want to be loved for all our parts. We want to be loved for our good, and we also want to be loved for our rotten. And I think the reason why most relationships don't work out is because you're loving someone who you don't have a full picture of. You don't even understand how to love that person. And I think that why I'm so passionate about talking about these things, even though it's very uncomfortable and it makes people side-eye me, for you to understand your love languages, for you to understand how you want to be loved, how you want to receive love, you have to be able to also bring your trauma to space. So in terms of my journey of trying to heal from trauma, it's always something that I felt like I couldn't unpack. I was too scared to unpack it, so I unpack it slowly and slowly. And that's something people have to realize about healing as well. I feel that there's always this immense pressure of getting like healing within a short space of time, and that's it, you're done, you're good, like, you know, now off you go. You know, you have to understand that healing is a journey, and for most people that have gone through some kind of trauma, some of these traumas, we're going to have them for the rest of our lives. And that's why I think it's very important for us to learn how to manage them when we're quite young, because then it doesn't affect a lot of things in your life as it does when you're not aware of it. So it was basically in 2014, I was driving. I remember just praying as I was driving on the road, and I started having flashbacks. And I remember just having like flashbacks after flashbacks of every time that I was sexually abused. And I just remember screaming and saying, no, it didn't happen, it's not true, it's not true. And I shut it down. And I think I shared it with someone that day, I really can't remember. That was for me the first time that I had the actual like pictures, the actual like mental knot of, oh snap, like this happened to you. Prior to that, I don't recall ever acknowledging that I'd gone through that. I don't recall ever thinking about it. I didn't go to seek help. I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't really talk to my parents about it. I remember sharing it with someone that I was very close with much later on. I think it was like maybe a year or 2 years after that, when we were so young. So no one sat there and was like, oh, you need to go to therapy. No one sat there and said, oh, you need to go talk to an older person about this. Like, we just didn't. Like, you know, it just, that conversation just got done. A few months later on, when a preacher who came to church, and that was the first time that I had sexual abuse being spoken about on a public platform. This male pastor, and he talked about his experience with sexual abuse. And I remember that day like crying, actually crying about it and actually acknowledging that it had happened. It was myself and maybe like 6 or 8 other girls that ended up going to get prayed for. So it was one of those things of, oh, so I guess okay, I guess you went through that. I guess you went through that. But we didn't really talk about it in the sense of, okay, let's actually get help. That was pretty much like me starting to acknowledge like, okay, so this did happen. Okay. But I think at that time, I just didn't know what to do with it. At that time, I wasn't in a relationship, and then I got into a relationship, and then I got sexually active with this person. It was literally the first time since I was like 19, I think. It was literally the first time since I was 19, like my first relationship. So this was now the first time that, you know, I was being, because I had been abstaining for like 3 years. I was not in a place where I felt like, well, I'm much older now, I'm 24, I know what I'm doing, so I'm comfortable making this decision. I just remember everything happening, and then afterwards I remember going to the bathroom and literally just like breaking down, and I just stood there like, what the hell? And I had the shower on, and that way he wouldn't hear me crying. And I literally just remember like my body breaking down and like almost like, I don't know, like, what's it called? Like when you have convulsions, I think that's what they're called. My body was literally just like shaking, and afterwards went back to bed. I kid you not, the next day I was in so much like pain and agony that the next day I just blocked his number and I just didn't talk to them for like a week. And during that week, I remember just thinking, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, what is it with you? Like, why are you not normal? Time I really thought, oh, okay, like, am I not attracted to men? Like, am I like, what's wrong? Like, you know, why am I feeling like this? I was never able to actually explain to that person why I blocked them. I just sort of just carried on, and then life just sort of went by up until, you know, they moved on. So, you know, after that experience, it just sort of became clear to me that there was obviously something more. And that time I did try to look for help from like church people, and that just didn't end up working out, but that's not the video for it. So in terms of being able to recognize, I think for me, that's the one pointer. A lot of people that I've spoken to that have experienced sexual trauma do not generally enjoy intimacy in relationships. And if you don't enjoy intimacy in relationships, there's definitely something going on there that you need to look at. Me, that's pretty much when I then got serious. Like, hey, listen, like, this is actually a big deal. You actually need to work through this. You actually need to start finding a way to heal from this. The way that I've healed from it, and I want to say this, I haven't healed from it in the sense that this is something that's completely done. Listen, I still freak out about being in an Uber. I'll tell you guys this. 2018 in November, my friends got me a ticket to come to Melbourne. This was like after come out of hospital. They got me a ticket, went to Melbourne. And when I was now on my way back from Melbourne, I got picked up so I had to book an Uber, and I never use an Uber. Like, anyone who knows me in real life knows that I don't go anywhere near Ubers, taxis, or anything like that. It just makes me have anxiety. So I remember being on this, and this was the first time that I went, oh snap. This was like a wake-up call to me to say, listen, this is a thing that you actually need to heal from. Like, stop shutting it down. You actually need to work through it now. And I think it was about 5 minutes into the Uber, I literally just felt my chest tightening, and I was sitting there going, what's wrong? Like, what's going on? And I already knew, oh snap, I'm having an anxiety attack. So I'm sitting there like counting backwards, and I was sitting there going, why did I feel that way? Why did I feel that way? And I started thinking about 2 days before that, a male friend of mine had come to pick me up, like innocent, nothing going on there, had come to pick me up like late night, just to like show me around Melbourne and stuff. And I remember being in the car with him, because this was like the first time that we were actually hanging out in person. I remember being in the car with this male friend of mine, right? I didn't feel unsafe as far as I was concerned. There was not that person had actually done, but I was literally like sitting like so tightly closed to the door. So as I'm now in this Uber and I start thinking about why I reacted that way, I thought back to that moment of me sitting uncomfortably, like sort of fidgeting with the door handle, because in my head I had to like prepare myself and position myself to, if this one tries to do anything, I could quickly just like open the door and jump out. And I started thinking about all the other times that I would go in spaces with a lot of males, and I would realize that I would literally like clench up, like my whole body would just clench up. So I started realizing all these things, and when I got back home, I actually started writing down this book where I write all these things that I find. And I think for me personally, that has really helped. I basically write all my experiences, like all the schemas that come up, because that's what I was taught. I was taught what schemas look like and how to understand them because of this. I'm actually going to show you guys this book. So this is the book that I was reading at that time, called Reinventing Your Life, the breakthrough program to end negative behavior and feel great again. So I did like this questionnaire thing, right? I don't know if you guys can see it, but I did this questionnaire thing in the book, and it basically helps you to identify what are called life traps. So when I did this life trap thing, I started journaling. Not really journaling, I would write down things that I find out. So I'd write down things that I either research on and they make sense, or things that I pick up on myself. So for me, that's how I've been doing the whole self-healing thing without really necessarily involving a therapist. I'm literally studying myself. Like when I see something, when I see a behavior, I want to know, okay, where is that behavior coming from? Where does it start? Like what is the root of that behavior, and when does it come up, and how can I actually now find a new way to deal with that behavior? As I started doing this whole studying myself and writing things down, I would notice certain patterns that I would have. For example, with rejection, I realized that, it took so little to make me feel rejected. Up until now, literally last night, I was crying about this. So it's still something that I'm dealing with. Identified that my sexual trauma was affecting me, because even in relationships or in friendships, I quickly feel rejected. Like rejection for me it's so quick, and I never understood where that came from, because much as yes, I want to be accepted by people, I've never been someone who is part of big groups of people. So for me, I'm quite okay being by myself, and I'm very confident, and so I never understood why at the same time, I also had that whole thing of being so fearful of being rejected. Fear of rejection was being problematic in my friendships. It was being problematic in my relationships, because even simple things like picking up the phone and calling someone and then they don't pick up, like someone that I'm in a relationship with or someone that I'm just getting to talk to and they don't pick up. Logically, I know they didn't pick up because they're probably busy, but immediately to me, I'll start thinking, oh no, maybe they don't want to be with me anymore. Maybe they don't want to talk to me anymore. Maybe I've called them too much. And once I decide that, okay, I've put in too much effort, now I'm starting to take away. And when you're doing that, that becomes self-destructive. So that was something that I had to recognize. Like I said, there are still things now that are just wounds for me, and it hurts me to know that I still get really down about being triggered by some of these things. Like I said, like last night, I was literally bawling my eyes out. Like I slept so late and I was crying the whole night because I was just so upset, because my rejection got triggered by situations that are not even meant to feel like rejection, because logically I know they're not rejection. I can't help but feel that they are. Today I was very frustrated with myself, and I have to remind myself over and over again that, listen, this is not a race. This is not something that you need to get over like in 2 seconds. This is literally your whole life that you get to actually work at this issue. In terms of communicating your trauma in relationships, I think that, obviously it's very important. Personally, I would never be with somebody that I don't feel safe enough to tell them about my trauma. I've been like in a mini relationship, like in 2019, I was like in a mini 2-second relationship where I was comfortable enough to tell the person, like, this is what I've been through, and they had already heard what I'd been through, like just by watching me on social media and all that. And even then I was lucky, and I was very fortunate that person, that was my first experience of telling someone, and they were very much receptive to it. But what I then found later on is, a lot of the times, unfortunately, people can be receptive to hearing about your trauma, but they might not necessarily understand how to deal with it or how to recognize it when it comes up. That's why I think it's so important for you to be aware, because if you are aware of the ways that your trauma shows up, you can then tell the other person, like, hey, listen, when I act this way, I'm acting this way because of this, and this comes from this behavior. At the end of the day, if you know your triggers and you know how to deal with them, you know what you need in that moment, it's very easy for you to then communicate to the other person. I think that it's very toxic to think that you're going to find someone who's just going to know how to deal with you and just going to know how to deal with your trauma and how to handle the whole situation. Most people can empathize with you, but when it comes to actually helping you in the moment to deal with it, they won't have a clue. And you need to be able to not depend on somebody else to fix you. Things that I had to do that I learned from this book was writing a letter. I had to write a letter to myself where I was basically acknowledging, because part of my hurt was that my pain never got heard. Part of my hurt was that it was never acknowledged, even by the people that did to me what they did. Best believe I've never received a sorry being sexually abused. No one ever came and said, hey, I'm so sorry I did that to you back then. And that's why, you know, that then builds up such a huge wound to you, and you become such a wounded female, and that's not healthy for anyone. Or you become such a wounded male, and that's not healthy for anyone. The second letter that I had to write was me basically now making a promise and a commitment to what I was going to do. I know all these things sound really wishy-washy, but even the people whose stories I've heard, these are some of the things that they've done. I made a commitment to myself. I had to write a commitment to me and basically promise the things that I was going to do for my younger self, promise all the ways that I was going to help her to heal and cross over the bridge of her trauma. The other thing that I had to do that I felt as though really was the life changer for me in terms of my relationships, in terms of like myself, was even like my relationship with my parents and my siblings, was on one day I just sat down and I wrote this thing. I don't know what to call it, like whether it was a list or whatever, but I wrote this thing. I wrote my wants and my needs. With the list that I wrote, I had to even go down to like really minor scenarios that it was detailed. It was literally things like me saying, when I'm crying or when I'm going through something and I reach out to a friend, what do I want from them? What do I need? So now I know that if I call someone, right, I'm not looking for you to solve the issue for me, because I'm very much of a solver. I like to solve my own problems. I want to be able to vent, because being able to vent allows me to have a bit more perspective so we can talk about it, but I don't want you to fix. It's pretty much how I then kick-started my healing journey, and that was very useful to me because it allowed me to have some form of perspective of what I'd gone through. It allowed me to have perspective on how I wanted to deal with it moving forward. Is it working? Yes. Am I 100% healed? Absolutely not. I think now I'm just starting to understand that healing to me now is not a barbed wire around your heart. It's not a barbed wire around like yourself. For me, healing is the foundation. So I think that at the start of my healing journey, I was definitely trying to make my healing be about creating this big barrier where no one can ever come in, no one can ever hurt me. And yet now I'm actually starting to realize, wait, no, that's not what healing is, and that's not what healthy and genuine healing is all about. You know, healing is all about building a better foundation for yourself. Mentally, I'm much stronger, and I found my self-worth, and now I don't feel like, oh, just because I was raped, that means that I'm not worthy. As I was growing older, you know, when the whole idea of, oh, should I have sex, should I not have sex, I remember I always felt like I didn't have a choice because I already knew I wasn't a virgin. So why would you say no? And I always thought I wasn't able to say no simply because of that. But now my wholeness, now in the stronger me, I know that no, doing that is a choice for me. I can choose to do it, or I can choose to not do it. And I shouldn't just give myself away like that just because, oh, well, I've already done it, or I've already gone through this, so whatever, it doesn't matter. Especially for younger girls as well. Like I said, for me, I was lucky because the fact that I barely got into long-term relationships anyway made sure that I never really had to have that conversation of, okay, are you ready to do this or are you not? That was good on that end. But then I know that a lot of young women, especially what I was getting in the comments, was that, you know, you feel like you're pressured to engage in sexual activities in relationships because you're not a virgin. And to be quite honest, if you're with somebody that makes you feel that way, or if you feel that way, you should probably not be in the relationship, because you don't want to be in a relationship with somebody that disregards your yes or your something that's valuable, and whoever you're with should not disregard that and do whatever they want. Again, that's pretty much all from me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a beautiful week, and I'll see you next time. Please make sure you do like, share, subscribe, send this to your girlfriends so that we can all heal together.